I thought I had found the one. Standing at the altar with Sarah watching her smile through those happy tears, I genuinely believed we were starting something real. We had dated for 2 years, built what felt like solid trust, and her family seemed nice enough. What I did not tell anyone, not even Sarah, was that 3 months earlier, my grandmother had passed away and left me 3 apartments in downtown Portland, worth over $1 million. I wanted to be certain Sarah loved me for who I was, not what I owned. Looking back at that decision now, I realize it saved me from the biggest mistake of my life. Because exactly 1 week after our wedding, everything I believed about my new family would shatter in the most calculated way imaginable. Before I continue with what happened, I would love to know where you are watching from. Drop your city in the comments below. If this story resonates with you, hit that like button and subscribe, because you will not believe how this unfolds. Trust me, the lessons I learned about family and money might change how you see relationships forever. Let me take you back to where it all started 3 months before my wedding day. My grandmother died on a Tuesday morning in early March. She was 87 years old, and honestly, I had been preparing myself for that call for months. She raised me from the time I was 12 after my parents divorced, and neither of them really wanted the responsibility of a kid full-time. My grandmother stepped in without hesitation. She was not wealthy in the flashy sense, but she was smart with money, careful, and she worked as a property manager for decades before retiring. When the lawyer called me in for the reading of her will, I expected maybe some family heirlooms, perhaps a small amount of savings. What I got instead knocked the wind out of me. She had left me 3 apartments, all located in desirable areas of downtown Portland. The lawyer, a patient older gentleman named Mr. Harrison, walked me through the paperwork with careful precision. Each apartment was worth approximately $350,000. The total value of my inheritance was over $1 million. I sat in that leather chair in his office, staring at documents I could barely process. My grandmother had owned these properties for over 20 years, renting them out quietly, never mentioning them to anyone in the family. Mr. Harrison explained that she had updated her will 2 years prior, specifically naming me as the sole beneficiary of these assets. When I asked why she chose me over her own children, my aunts and uncles, he showed me a handwritten note she had attached to the will. It read simply, "Eugene was the only one who visited me every week, even when he was busy with work and his own life. He deserves this more than people who only called when they needed something." I cried reading those words. My grandmother had always been straightforward, never overly emotional, but that note showed me she noticed everything. She saw who showed up and who did not. At that time, Sarah and I had been engaged for 6 months. The wedding was planned for June, just 3 months away. I loved Sarah. She was kind, funny, worked as an elementary school teacher, and we had built what I thought was a genuine connection. But there was something that nagged at me, something I could not quite put my finger on. Her mother, Mrs. Patricia Hendricks, had always been intensely interested in finances. During family dinners, she would casually ask about my salary, my savings plan, whether I had a retirement fund, if I was thinking about buying property. At first, I thought she was just being a concerned mother, making sure her daughter was marrying someone stable. Sarah would laugh it off, telling me, "Mom just wants to make sure we are stable, babe. She worries too much." But after I received the inheritance, those questions felt different. I sat in my apartment one evening, staring at the legal documents spread across my kitchen table, and I made a decision. I called my best friend Marcus. "Dude, are you serious right now?" Marcus said when I told him about the apartments. "Over $1 million, Eugene, that is insane." "I know," I said. "But here is the thing. I do not know if I should tell Sarah." There was a pause on the line. "You are engaged to her man," Are you not supposed to share everything? That is what I thought, I admitted. But her mom has been asking so many questions about money lately. What if Sarah tells her family and suddenly everything changes? What if they start seeing me differently? Marcus was quiet for a moment, then said, "If Sarah loves you, she loves you broke or rich. But her mom? I do not know, man. Something feels off about how much she cares about your finances." That conversation solidified my decision. I would keep the inheritance quiet until after the wedding. I wanted to see if Sarah's feelings and her family's behavior would remain the same without the knowledge of my newfound wealth. I told myself it was not about distrust. It was about certainty. The wedding preparations continued. Mrs. Hendricks became increasingly involved, insisting on choosing the venue, the menu, even the guest list. When I gently suggested Sarah and I should make some of these decisions ourselves, Sarah defended her mother. She has always dreamed of planning her daughter's wedding. "Eugene," Sarah said, squeezing my hand. "Just let her have this. It makes her happy." I shrugged it off, not wanting to create conflict before we were even married. But there were moments that stuck with me. One evening, about a month before the wedding, Mrs. Hendricks cornered me in the kitchen during a family dinner. "So, Eugene," she said, her tone casual, but her eyes sharp. "Do you have any assets, property investments we should know about?" I kept my expression neutral. "Just my savings from work, Mrs. Hendricks. Nothing special." She raised an eyebrow, studying my face for a moment longer than felt comfortable, then smiled. "Well, that is fine, as long as you can provide for my daughter." That interaction left a sour taste in my mouth, but I pushed it aside. The wedding day arrived, and it was beautiful. Sarah looked stunning, our vows felt genuine, and for a moment all my doubts disappeared. I thought I had made the right choice. We spent our honeymoon in Hawaii, 7 days of beaches, hikes, and what felt like pure happiness. Sarah was relaxed, affectionate, never once mentioning money or future plans, beyond enjoying our time together. I started thinking maybe I had been overthinking everything. Maybe I should tell her about the inheritance, soon come clean, and start our marriage with complete transparency. But I decided to wait just a little longer. We returned from Hawaii on a Sunday evening, exhausted but happy. Our apartment, a modest 2-bedroom rental in the Portland suburbs, felt smaller after a week in a beachfront resort, but it was home. We spent Monday unpacking, doing laundry, and settling back into regular life. On Tuesday morning, I was in my home office working remotely when Sarah's phone rang. I heard her talking in the living room, her voice bright and cheerful. "Oh, that would be lovely, Mom. Of course you can come visit." She walked into my office after hanging up. "My parents want to come see us this Saturday. They said they have been missing us and want to hear all about the honeymoon." I glanced up from my laptop. "This Saturday, we just got back 2 days ago." Sarah shrugged, smiling. "I know, but they are excited. Is that okay?" Something about the timing felt odd, but I could not articulate why. "Sure," I said. "That is fine." Saturday arrived, and Mr. and Mrs. Hendricks showed up at our door at exactly 11 in the morning, carrying bags of groceries and wrapped gifts. Mrs. Hendricks hugged Sarah tightly, then turned to me with a smile that did not quite reach her eyes. "Eugene, how is married life treating you?" "Great, Mrs. Hendricks. Really great." We settled into the living room, and for the first hour, everything seemed normal. We ate lunch, shared stories about Hawaii, and looked through photos on Sarah's phone. Then, as I was clearing plates from the coffee table, Mrs. Hendricks shifted in her seat. "So," she said, her tone changing to something more serious, "now that you two are married, we need to talk about the future." I set the plates down slowly, glancing at Sarah. She looked relaxed, unsuspecting. "What about the future?" I asked. Mrs. Hendricks folded her hands in her lap. "Well, Sarah mentioned you are still renting this apartment. That is fine for now, but long-term, you need to think about buying a house. Building equity, making real investments." I nodded. "We have talked about that. We are planning to start saving for a down payment." "That is good," she said. "But saving takes time. Your father and I want to help." Mr. Hendricks, who had been silent until now, leaned forward. "We are willing to co-sign on a mortgage for you two. Help you get started with a real property." I appreciated the offer on the surface, but something about the way it was presented felt like a setup. "That is very generous, but Sarah and I want to do this on our own. We want to build something ourselves." The temperature in the room dropped noticeably. Mrs. Hendricks's smile tightened. "Eugene, pride is one thing, but practicality is another. You do not want Sarah living in a rental forever, do you, no?" "Mom," Sarah interjected, her voice uncertain. "We are fine for now. We will figure it out when we are ready." But her mother was not backing down. "I just think if Eugene had any assets or savings we do not know about, now would be the time to share. Marriage is about transparency, after all." My blood pressure spiked. That sentence was not a casual comment. It was a probe, deliberate and pointed. I met her gaze evenly. "I have been transparent with Sarah about everything that matters." Mrs. Hendricks stared at me, then slowly turned to Sarah. "Honey, has Eugene mentioned anything about inheritance, family money?" Sarah looked confused. "No, Mom." "Why would you ask that?" I felt anger rising in my chest, but I kept my voice controlled. "Why are you asking about inheritance, Mrs. Hendricks?" She reached into her large purse, and for a moment I thought she might pull out a checkbook or some financial planning pamphlet. Instead, she withdrew a manila envelope and placed it on the coffee table between us. "Because I did some digging, Eugene." My stomach dropped. I knew even before she opened that envelope what was inside. She pulled out several photocopied pages, official-looking documents with legal seals and typed text. My eyes caught the header, "Last Will and Testament of Margaret Ann Caldwell." My grandmother's name. 3 apartments in downtown Portland. Mrs. Hendricks said, her voice steady and cold. "Over $1 million in total assets. And you did not think to mention this to your wife." The room went completely silent. I could hear my own heartbeat pounding in my ears. Sarah's face had gone pale. "Eugene," she whispered, "is this true?" I looked at her, then at the documents on the table, then back at her mother's triumphant expression. "Yes, it is true." "But why did you not tell me?" Sarah's voice cracked. "I wanted to make sure," Mrs. Hendricks cut me off. "Make sure what, that Sarah was not a gold digger." How insulting. "That is not what I was going to say." I snapped, but the damage was done. Sarah was staring at me like I was a stranger. "Mr. Hendricks finally spoke, his voice low and stern. "This is a serious breach of trust, Eugene. You kept significant assets hidden from your wife." "We have been married for 1 week," I said, my voice rising. "And how did you even get these documents? Did you investigate me?" Mrs. Hendricks did not flinch. "Your grandmother's obituary mentioned estate settlement. I simply went to the courthouse and looked at the public records. It is all legal." I felt like the walls were closing in. They had known before the wedding. They had known and said nothing, waiting for this exact moment. But Mrs. Hendricks was not finished. She reached back into her purse and pulled out another stack of papers, thicker this time, bound with a black clip. "Since we are all being transparent now, she said, placing the papers on top of the will documents. I brought something that will protect everyone involved. I picked up the stack and started reading. The words blurred together at first, but certain phrases jumped out: postnuptial agreement, marital property, equal division of assets, trust fund administration. What is this? I asked, though I already knew. It is a postnuptial agreement, she said calmly. It ensures that the 3 apartments will be considered marital property shared equally between you and Sarah. It also places the management of those assets into a family trust. I flipped through the pages, my hands shaking. The trust administrators listed were Mr. and Mrs. Thomas and Patricia Hendricks. You want me to sign over control of my inheritance to you? I said, my voice barely above a whisper. Not to us, Mrs. Hendricks corrected. To a family trust that protects Sarah's interests. What if something happens to you? What if you make poor investment decisions? This protects her future. I looked at Sarah desperately, hoping she would see how insane this was. But she was staring at the papers, chewing her bottom lip. Mom, this seems like a lot, she said hesitantly. Sweetheart, this is for your protection. You are entitled to half of everything. That is how marriage works. I stood up, the papers still clutched in my hand. My mind was racing, but one thought cut through the chaos with perfect clarity. This was a setup from the beginning. How long have you known? I asked, my voice shaking. Mrs. Hendricks avoided my eyes. How long? I repeated louder this time. She sighed as if I was being unreasonable. I found out about 2 months before the wedding. Your grandmother's obituary mentioned the estate settlement, and I did my research. 2 months before the wedding. They had known almost the entire time we were planning our marriage. I turned to Sarah. Did you know? Her eyes widened, tears spilling over. I swear I did not, Eugene. I had no idea Mom was looking into this. I wanted to believe her. Part of me did. But the fact remained that she was sitting there listening to her mother demand I sign away control of my assets, and she had not once told them to stop. Mrs. Hendricks stood up, smoothing her skirt. Look, this does not have to be dramatic. Just sign the papers. It is fair for everyone. I let out a laugh that sounded bitter even to my own ears. Fair, you investigated me behind my back, found out about my inheritance, hid what you knew, waited until after we were married, and then ambushed me in my own home with legal documents and a plan to control my assets. And you think that is fair? Mr. Hendricks stood as well, his expression hardening. Son, do not make this harder than it needs to be. You married our daughter. That means you are part of this family now, and family shares. Family does not scheme, I shot back. Family does not manipulate. Mrs. Hendricks's face flushed red. We are trying to protect our daughter. You committed financial infidelity by hiding assets. We have been married for 7 days, I shouted. Sarah was crying openly now. Please, everyone, just stop. But nobody was listening to her. Mrs. Hendricks stepped closer to me, her voice dropping to something cold and threatening. If you do not sign this agreement, Eugene, you are going to regret it. We will make sure everyone knows what kind of man you are. Hiding money from your wife. Lying to your family. That was the moment I knew exactly what I needed to do. I pulled my phone from my pocket and dialed a number I had saved months ago. What are you doing? Mrs. Hendricks demanded. Calling my lawyer. The phone rang twice before a familiar voice answered. Eugene, everything okay? Mr. Reyes, I need you to come to my apartment right now. I have a situation. What kind of situation? I looked directly at Mrs. Hendricks. The kind where someone is trying to coerce me into signing a postnuptial agreement under duress. Mr. Reyes's tone sharpened immediately. Do not sign anything. I will be there in 30 minutes. I hung up and set my phone on the table. Mrs. Hendricks's face had gone pale. You are calling a lawyer on us, she said, her voice shrill. You brought legal documents and a plan to seize control of my assets to my home without my knowledge or consent. I said coldly. I am protecting myself. The next 30 minutes were the longest of my life. Mr. and Mrs. Hendricks refused to leave, insisting I was overreacting, that I just needed to calm down and think rationally. Sarah sat on the couch, crying quietly, torn between her parents and me. I used the time to reread the postnuptial agreement more carefully. The more I read, the worse it got. The document was not just about sharing assets. It gave the Hendricks family complete control over investment decisions, sale decisions, and even rental agreements for the apartments. There was a clause that allowed them to charge management fees. Another clause that made it nearly impossible for me to remove them as trustees without Sarah's consent. This was not about protecting Sarah. This was about controlling my money. When Mr. Reyes arrived, he was a calm, professional presence in the chaos. David Reyes was in his early 50s with silver hair and wire-rimmed glasses. He had handled my grandmother's estate, and I trusted him completely. He read through the post-nuptial agreement in silence, his expression growing more severe with each page. Finally, he set the papers down and looked at the Hendricks family. This agreement is unconscionable, he said simply. It is heavily one-sided, and if signed under these circumstances, it could easily be contested as signed under duress. We are not coercing anyone, Mr. Hendricks protested. Mr. Reyes ignored him and turned to me. Eugene, do you understand that in the state of Oregon, we follow equitable distribution laws, not community property laws? Assets inherited before or during a marriage, if kept separate, remain the property of the individual who inherited them. I did not know that, I admitted. Well, now you do. The 3 apartments are yours, legally entirely yours. Your wife has no automatic claim to them unless you choose to commingle the assets or add her name to the deeds. Mrs. Hendricks stood up abruptly. This is ridiculous. Sarah is his wife. She deserves respect and honesty. Mr. Reyes interrupted, his voice firm. But she does not have a legal right to assets her husband inherited independently. And attempting to pressure him into signing away control of those assets is frankly bordering on financial abuse. The room fell silent. Sarah was staring at her mother with an expression I could not quite read: shock, betrayal, confusion, maybe all 3. I walked to the front door and opened it. I want you both to leave. Now. Mrs. Hendricks's mouth fell open. You cannot be serious. If you are not out of my home in the next 60 seconds, I am calling the police. Mr. Hendricks grabbed his wife's arm. Patricia, we should go. She jerked away from him, but headed for the door, snatching her purse from the couch. At the threshold, she turned back to me, her eyes filled with cold fury. You will regret this, Eugene. Sarah will see who you really are. A selfish, paranoid man who does not trust his own wife. Get out, I said quietly. They left. The door closed behind them and the apartment fell into suffocating silence. Sarah sat on the couch, her face in her hands. I stood by the door, emotionally exhausted. Mr. Reyes quietly gathered the legal documents, placing them in his briefcase. I will hold on to these, he said. If they try anything else, call me immediately. Thank you, David. He paused at the door, glancing at Sarah, then back at me. For what it is worth, Eugene, you made the right call. Protecting yourself is not the same as distrusting your wife. But you two need to talk. Really talk. After he left, I sat down in the chair across from Sarah. She looked up, her eyes red and swollen. "Why did you not tell me?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. I took a deep breath. "Because I wanted to be sure that you loved me for me, not for what I had. Your mother has been asking about my finances since we started dating. I needed to know that our relationship was real. But we were engaged. We were planning a life together. I know. And I was going to tell you. I was waiting for the right time after the wedding, once we had settled into marriage. I did not expect your parents to investigate me and show up with a legal ambush." Sarah shook her head. "I did not know they were going to do that. I swear, Eugene." "I believe you did not know about today," I said carefully. "But did you know they were looking into my finances?" She hesitated, and that hesitation told me everything. "Mom mentioned she was curious about your background," she admitted. "She said she just wanted to make sure you were stable. I told her to stop being nosy, but I did not think she would actually go to the courthouse." I felt a wave of disappointment wash over me. "So you knew she was digging and you did not tell me?" I did not think it was a big deal. "Sarah, they showed up with a postnuptial agreement designed to take control of my assets and put your parents in charge. How is that not a big deal?" She stood up, wrapping her arms around herself. "I do not know, Eugene. I do not know what to think anymore. You hid something huge from me. My parents crossed a line. I feel like I am caught in the middle of something I never asked for." "You are not in the middle," I said, standing to face her. "You are my wife. You are supposed to be on my side. And you are supposed to trust me." She shot back. We stared at each other, both of us breathing hard, both of us realizing that the foundation of our marriage had massive cracks we had not noticed before. "I need some time," Sarah said finally. "I need to think." "What does that mean?" "It means I am going to stay with my parents for a few days." My heart sank. "Sarah, do not do that. Stay here. We can work through this." She shook her head, already moving toward the bedroom. "I cannot be here right now, Eugene. I cannot look at you without feeling confused and hurt." She packed a bag while I stood helplessly in the doorway. 20 minutes later, she was gone. The apartment felt cavernous and empty. I sat on the couch where just hours earlier her parents had tried to manipulate me out of my inheritance, and I let myself feel the full weight of what had just happened. I called Marcus. "Dude, are you okay?" he asked as soon as he picked up. I told him everything, the ambush, the post-nuptial agreement, Sarah leaving. "Holy hell," Marcus breathed. "Eugene, I am so sorry. But honestly, you dodged a bullet. Imagine if you had signed that agreement." "I know," I said. "But I still love her, Marcus. I thought we were building something real." "Maybe you were. But her family was building something else entirely." Over the next 2 weeks, Sarah stayed at her parents' house. We texted sporadically, brief, polite messages that said nothing of substance. I suggested couples counseling. She said she needed more time. I threw myself into work trying to distract myself from the wreckage of my marriage. But in the quiet moments, I thought about my grandmother. She had been right to leave those apartments to me. She had seen through people in a way I was only beginning to understand. I decided to move into one of the inherited apartments, the smallest one, a cozy one-bedroom in the Pearl District. I spent weekends painting the walls, replacing old fixtures, making it mine. The act of creating something with my own hands felt therapeutic. Marcus came over one Saturday with pizza and beer. We sat on the floor of my unfurnished living room, eating straight from the box. "You doing okay, man?" he asked. "Getting there," I said. "It is strange. I thought losing Sarah would destroy me, but honestly, I feel lighter, like I can breathe again." "That is because you are not carrying the weight of their expectations anymore." 3 months after the confrontation, a courier delivered divorce papers to my door. Sarah had filed. The petition was straightforward: no children, minimal shared assets, a marriage that lasted less than 6 months. She was not asking for anything from the apartments. In fact, her lawyer had explicitly noted that she acknowledged the inheritance as separate property. I called Mr. Reyes, and he reviewed the papers. "This is clean, Eugene. She is not fighting you on anything. If you want to contest it, we can, but honestly, this is probably the best outcome." I signed the papers that same day. No hesitation, no second guessing. The divorce was finalized by the end of summer. I kept all 3 apartments. I sold one of them and used the proceeds to invest in a tech startup that a former colleague was launching. I renovated the second apartment and started renting it out. The third one, the one I lived in, became my sanctuary. I did not hate Sarah. I did not even hate her parents, though I would never speak to them again. What I felt was something closer to gratitude. They had revealed their true intentions before it was too late, before I had signed anything away, before children or years of intertwined finances made separation impossible. I started dating again about a year later. I met someone through a friend, a software engineer named Kelly, who knew nothing about my financial situation when we first started talking. We bonded over hiking trails and terrible science fiction movies. When I eventually told her about the apartments months into our relationship, she just shrugged. "That is cool," she said, "but I am more interested in where you want to travel next." That response told me everything I needed to know. Looking back now, I understand that the decision to keep my inheritance secret was not about distrust. It was about self-preservation. It was about making sure that the person I was building a life with wanted to build that life with me, not with my bank account. I learned that transparency in a relationship is essential, but so is discernment. Not everyone deserves to know everything about you, especially not right away. Some people will take your honesty and twist it into leverage. Some families will see your success as something they are entitled to. My grandmother knew that. She had watched people come and go from her life, watched who showed up when there was nothing to gain, and who disappeared when the benefits dried up. She chose to leave her legacy to someone who had proven himself through presence, not through expectation. I think about her often, especially when I am sitting in the apartment she gave me looking out at the city lights. I think about how she worked quietly for decades building something solid, and how she made sure it went to someone who would respect that work. The 3 apartments are not just financial assets to me anymore. They are a reminder that real wealth is not about money. It is about knowing who you are, protecting your boundaries, and surrounding yourself with people who value you beyond what you can provide. I am not bitter about what happened with Sarah and her family. If anything, I am grateful. They taught me one of life's most important lessons: not everyone who says they love you actually loves who you are. Some people love the idea of you, the potential of you, the resources you bring. And the moment you stop providing what they want, the love evaporates. Real love does not come with conditions. Real love does not show up with a notary and a plan to take control of your assets. Real love shows up when there is nothing to gain, and it stays. I wish I had understood that earlier. But I am glad I understand it now. Sometimes the hardest truth to accept is that not everyone who says they love you actually loves who you are. And that is okay, because the moment you stop needing their approval, is the moment you truly become free. If you have ever had to make a tough decision about trust and money in a relationship, I want to hear your story. Drop a comment below and tell me how you handled it. Did you keep secrets to protect yourself? Or did you go all in with transparency? There is no right answer, only what feels right for you. If this story resonated with you or made you think differently about relationships and finances, please hit that like button. It really helps others find these stories. And if you have not already subscribed to the channel, because I share real experiences about life, family, and the lessons we learn when things do not go as planned. Share this video with someone who might need to hear it, maybe someone going through their own relationship struggles or facing tough decisions about trust. Thank you for listening to my story. I hope it brought you some clarity, or at least made you feel less alone in your own journey. Remember, protecting yourself is not the same as being selfish. Sometimes the kindest thing you can do for yourself is to set boundaries, even with the people you love. Take care of yourselves out there, and I will see you in the next one.